Hey, what is going on, guys? My name is ThePromG and welcome back to a brand new video. Now today, we're going to be doing a manga review of Knights of Sidonia by Nihei. Now this is a series that I just recently finished up, and it's one where there's a lot to talk about, so I figured what better way to do that than to make a manga review, and the first one on this channel. So if you guys do enjoy it, make sure to leave it a like, and leave in the comments anything that you'd like to see me do different with my manga reviews, because I'll definitely consider it, always open to criticism and feedback. So yeah, Knights of Sidonia is a 15-volume series, sci-fi series, by Nihei. Other works by him include Mega Blam. They all kind of have this cyberpunk, they're all wearing these suits, as you can see, like these spacesuit kind of things. He loves to do that kind of style. I really enjoyed this series, but there's lots of things that I like to criticize as well, but we'll start off by going into a brief summary of the story. So the story takes place 1,000 years in the future after Earth was destroyed by these mysterious aliens, and the humans got onto these seed ships and they all went into space to live there. At the time of the story, the only known seed ship left that carries hundreds of thousands of people is called Sidonia. It's this vast ship with thousands and thousands of buildings and just these huge structures. Nihei is known for his drawings of structures. I think he actually went to school for design, architecture, something like that, and it really shows in this manga and his other works as well. Now we're introduced to our main character, Nagate Tanikaze, and he comes up from the underground where he's been raised his whole life, so he has no knowledge of anything going on the surface. And ever since his grandfather died and he started running low on food, he went up to the surface and he got caught eating food or stealing rice. So he gets interrogated and they say, "We don't have any record of you even existing." So they decide to put him into the defense force and they train him to pilot these mechs they have called guards. And what they use these for is going out to kill the aliens, which have begun to attack their ship and threaten all humanity left on the ship. And they quickly find out that Nagate is a really skilled pilot and that he has incredible skills and he just is really something else. So they decided to put him on the force and they give him the most advanced mech that they have at the time. Now the main thing that sets this manga apart is how the story is told. So with most manga, they'll give you a little bit of backstory and some exposition as the story goes on, kind of filling you in. But with Knights of Sidonia, what Nihei does is he allows the reader to fill in the gaps, or maybe not allow is the right word, he forces the reader to fill in the gaps by not giving all the information up front, and lots of elements of the story remain mysterious throughout, and it kind of leaves up to you to figure out what's going on and what the history of the Sidonia is. Now these aliens called Ghana that attack the ship, they're also kind of shrouded in mystery, as we know how to kill him, but they also seem to be evolving as humans evolve, which is very interesting. I won't tell anything about that, but there are definitely some very interesting storytelling elements as it's organic and it forces the reader to really pay attention and fill in the gaps, because this story does not hold your hand at all. Now for consistency, I think that the story is told at a really good pace and it never gets too boring. I will say, sometimes there are too frequently mech fights against these aliens, the Ghana, that sometimes get a little bit repetitive, but the way that Nihei progresses the aliens, like he develops the Ghana and also the humans, so that kind of helps it to be more consistent. But I found personally reading, sometimes it got a little bit stale. Now moving on to characters, the cast of characters in the series is actually pretty large, and for the most part the characters are likable. The main character Nagate doesn't really shine through as a great protagonist in the early volumes, but as you get to about volume 3 and onwards, he really does show some development as a character and just does some really badass stunts against these aliens. There's also a love interest element that I'll get into later, but there are a lot of characters that are there just for the sake of like this romance element. They seem kind of disposable, and like I was supposed to care about them, but I didn't really care about them. But there are definitely some characters in this kind of romance element of the story that I really thought were strong characters, and I really ended up liking them as the story went on. Now as far as character development goes, it wasn't super obvious as I read the story that these characters are developing, but if you compare it at the beginning to the end, you can definitely see that the characters have indeed developed and they're not the same people that they were before. You can even tell by the covers of volume 1 to 15, you have Nagate on the front, and you can see that at first he's like kind of this clumsy dude who's kind of lighthearted, and you can really tell from the cover of 15 that he's become more stoic and he really has these firm beliefs and things that he wants to accomplish. Now I'll talk about the whole romance aspect of it at the end, because I think that's the most controversial element of this series, but as far as characters go as a whole, they're all pretty likable. I really love the main character, and the development's there, just not necessarily extremely obvious like it would be in other series. Now, Tatsumo Nihei's art is kind of polarizing, I've seen, and personally I'm a huge fan of it. Like I said before, he went to design school, and because of this, it's very evident in his art that he has a passion for drawing these environments. If you've read Blam, you know, like the Endless City. It's kind of similar in Knights of Sidonia. It has this massive city that, like, all these different intricate places that you can explore and kind of imagine in your head. It leaves a lot to the imagination, as in filling the gaps in the city, because you get to see some of it. And one thing that I really like about Knights of Sidonia is that in between each chapter, it'll give you a page showing a specific place within this Sidonia ship that's just massive, and it kind of gives you a slice out of the whole environment. But yeah, the world building and just the environmental aspect of Knights of Sidonia is definitely one of its stronger points, I'd say. Now, the art style starts off as being kind of bold and having these outlines to each character, and as it goes on, the style kind of changes. It goes away from the bold outlined characters and objects, and it kind of becomes more rough. But in my opinion, I like that style better because it's a little bit lighter, and it really all comes down to personal preference at the end of the day. Neither style is bad, but the consistency kind of changes at the 5th volume, which isn't a bad thing in my opinion. Another thing that Nihei does really well with his art is showing the comparisons of size between things. Like, it'll show the ship, which is massive, but in comparison to an alien or another planet, it's just tiny. And I'll show some examples in the book of some scenes that I really enjoyed this use of perspective in. I'd say that the way the story is told and the artwork are probably my 2 favorite elements of the manga. Now, that being said, there's also a romance element of this manga that I don't think a lot of people are a fan of, and I'll say personally, I wasn't the biggest fan of it. There were elements that I liked, but at the same time, I think that the romance element of this manga is probably the weakest link of the story, and I'll explain why. Now, throughout the story, I'd say there are about 7 or 8 of these romance interests that Nagata is introduced to, and there are varying levels of importance, I feel. Like, some of them are really like main characters and they're vital to the plot, and the rest of these characters just seem to be thrown in for no other reason than just to have another person that Nagata could potentially fall in love with, but it's really just seems like forced content that doesn't really need to be there. Now, as for who he ends up with, I won't spoil it. I will leave you to read it because I do recommend reading this, but I won't spoil the romance side of it. And I think this is where most people think that the manga really falls apart, is when he shows who he ends up with. And again, I won't spoil it, but the character that he ends up with is probably who I was hoping he wouldn't end up with, or one of the ones that I was hoping wouldn't make it to the end. And the person that I thought he was going to be with, I think most people wanted, just kind of gets thrown to the side, and it's really disappointing. Now, I know I'm complaining about this romance aspect of the story, but it really isn't that big in the grand scheme of things. As a whole, the manga is fantastic. You got the artwork, the action, and really good and likable characters. The story also flows organically, so it allows the reader to use their imagination and fill in the blanks on what is really going on behind the scenes and all the mysteries that Sidonia holds. Overall, I really would recommend reading Knights of Sidonia, whether it be in the singles or the new master editions that are coming out. I think you can't go wrong with either of those formats. Now, for my final review, I would give Knights of Sidonia a 7 to 8 out of 10. It's a really strong story with really good characters and awesome action and a lot of mystery and suspense within the story, but also some elements that I think really could have been improved upon by Nihei. That all being said, I would highly recommend you go read Knights of Sidonia. It was one of my favorite things that I've read this year, and I think that you'll enjoy it too. That is going to wrap up this manga review for Knights of Sidonia. If you guys did enjoy it, make sure to leave a like and subscribe for more manga videos and reviews just like this. So yeah, this has been ThePromG. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and as always, hope to catch you in the next one.